The divorce papers arrived at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, exactly 12 hours after I'd slipped back into our house from his brother's apartment. Malcolm stood in our kitchen doorway, still in his pajamas, holding the envelope like it contained poison. His eyes weren't angry, they were empty. That's when I knew my life was about to implode. The silence in our house had become suffocating. For 7 days straight, Malcolm barely acknowledged my existence. He'd grunt responses to direct questions, nod at dinner requests, and spend every evening locked away in his home office with his laptop and endless work calls. I tried everything to get his attention. I cooked his favorite meals, wore the dress he'd once said made me look stunning, even suggested we watch that stupid action movie he loved. Nothing. It was like I'd become invisible in my own home. "Daddy, why won't you talk to Mommy?" our 7-year-old daughter Ari asked during breakfast on day 6 of his cold shoulder treatment. Malcolm glanced up from his phone just long enough to ruffle her hair. "Daddy's just busy with work, sweetheart. Eat your cereal." But he wasn't just busy. He was punishing me, though I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong this time. Maybe I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning again, or maybe he was still upset about the credit card bill from last month. Whatever it was, he was being completely unreasonable. That evening, after putting Ari to bed, I cornered him in his office. "Malcolm, we need to talk. This silent treatment is ridiculous." He didn't look up from his computer screen. "I'm working, Zephyra." "You're always working. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked how my day was, or showed any interest in your wife's life?" Finally, he turned around in his chair. His dark eyes looked tired, older somehow. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to act like you care. I want you to put down the laptop and talk to me like I matter. I feel like I'm living with a stranger." Malcolm stared at me for a long moment, then turned back to his screen. "I have a deadline tomorrow." The dismissal hit me like a slap. I stood there for another minute, waiting for him to change his mind, to apologize, to do something. But he just kept typing, his fingers clicking away on the keyboard like I wasn't even there. I pulled out my phone and texted my sister Nina. "He's being impossible again. A week of barely speaking to me. I can't live like this." Her response came quickly. "You deserve better than that cold fish. Put yourself first for once." Then I found myself scrolling through my contacts until I landed on Rowan's name. Malcolm's younger brother had always been the opposite of his older sibling, warm, attentive, actually interested in conversation. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed, "Hey, are you free to talk? I really need someone who actually listens right now." The response was immediate. "Of course, what's wrong? Want to come over?" I glanced back at Malcolm, still hunched over his computer, completely absorbed in his work. He probably wouldn't even notice if I left. "On my way," I typed back. Rowan's apartment was everything our house wasn't: warm, inviting, filled with the smell of something delicious cooking on the stove. He opened the door, wearing a casual t-shirt that showed off his gym instructor physique, his face immediately creasing with concern. "Zeph, come in, come in. You look upset. What's going on?" The use of my old nickname, something Malcolm hadn't called me in years, almost brought tears to my eyes. Rowan had always been the brother who remembered little things, who made me feel seen. "It's Malcolm," I said, settling onto his comfortable couch. "He's been giving me the silent treatment for a week. I don't know what I did wrong, but he won't talk to me, won't look at me. I feel like I'm going crazy." Rowan handed me a glass of wine and sat down beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "That doesn't sound like the Malcolm I know. He's always been quiet, but not cruel." "You don't live with him. You don't see how cold he can be. I try so hard to make him happy, to be a good wife, but nothing I do matters. He cares more about his computer than his own family." "I'm sure that's not true." "It is true." The wine was already making me feel looser, more honest. "When was the last time he asked about my job? My dreams? My feelings?" He treats me like I'm just there to cook dinner and take care of Ari. I'm 32 years old, Rowan. I have needs too. Rowan's hand found mine, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. You're an amazing woman, Zeph. Any man would be lucky to have your attention. The validation felt like water in a desert. When was the last time someone had looked at me like I mattered? When was the last time someone had really listened to what I was saying? Remember when we used to talk for hours? I asked, scooting closer to him on the couch. Before Malcolm and I got married, when we'd all hang out together, you always made me laugh. I remember, Rowan said softly. His eyes were fixed on my face, drinking in every word. I remember thinking Malcolm was the luckiest guy in the world. The air between us had shifted, become charged with something dangerous and electric. I knew I should leave, should go home to my cold house and distant husband. Instead, I leaned closer. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd met you first, I whispered. Rowan's breath caught. Zeph, you're married to my brother. My brother who ignores me, my brother who makes me feel invisible. I reached up and touched his cheek. You make me feel alive again. What happened next felt inevitable, like we were both falling off a cliff together. His lips found mine, and for the first time in months, I felt wanted, desired, important. All the loneliness and frustration of the past week melted away in his arms. Afterward, lying in his bed, reality started to creep back in. Rowan was quiet, staring at the ceiling with obvious regret written across his features. This was a mistake, he said finally. Malcolm's my brother. You're my sister-in-law. This is so messed up. But I wasn't ready for regret yet. The warmth of being wanted was too precious to give up. Malcolm pushed me to this. If he'd been a better husband, if he'd paid attention to me, none of this would have happened. I texted Nina on the drive home. I did something tonight, something I probably shouldn't have, but I'm tired of being ignored. Her response, good for you. You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. When I slipped back into our house at nearly midnight, I found Malcolm sitting at the kitchen table with his phone in his hands. His eyes met mine as I walked through the door, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. Where were you? He asked quietly. Out with Nina. I needed some sister time. The lie came easily, but Malcolm's stare made me feel exposed, like he could see right through me. He nodded slowly, then stood up and walked past me toward the stairs. I'm going to bed. As I watched him disappear upstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed forever. Sunday brunch at Romano's was a monthly tradition with Malcolm's parents. Usually I looked forward to these gatherings. Vivian and Bernard were good people, and Ari loved spending time with her grandparents. But this Sunday, sitting across from Rowan, while Malcolm maintained his stony silence, every moment felt like walking through a minefield. You're awfully quiet today, Malcolm, Vivian observed, cutting into her eggs Benedict with surgical precision. At 62, she still carried herself with the authority of the high school principal she'd been for 30 years. Malcolm shrugged, not looking up from his untouched plate. Just tired. He's been working himself to death, I jumped in, trying to sound like the concerned wife. I keep telling him he needs to take better care of himself, but you know how he is with deadlines. I caught Rowan's eye across the table and felt a flush creep up my neck. He looked away quickly, focusing intently on buttering his toast. Maybe you should plan a vacation, Bernard suggested in his quiet way. You two haven't had alone time in ages. That's a great idea, I said, reaching over to touch Malcolm's arm. He didn't pull away, but his muscle tensed under my fingers. We could go somewhere romantic. Remember our honeymoon in Napa? I remember, Malcolm said flatly. The tension was suffocating. Ari was picking at her pancakes, sensing the weird energy at the table even if she couldn't understand it. I decided to try a different approach. Humor had always been my way of deflecting uncomfortable situations. Maybe I should just accept that I'm married to his laptop now, I said with a forced laugh. At least the laptop doesn't leave dirty socks on the floor. Vivian's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Excuse me? Oh, you know how men are. Work always comes first. I'm just saying maybe I should start looking for companionship elsewhere. I was trying to be funny, but the words came out sharper than I'd intended. The silence that followed was deafening. Malcolm's jaw tightened, and I saw his parents exchange a look that made my stomach churn. "Mummy, what's companionship?" Ari asked innocently. "Nothing, sweetheart. Eat your pancakes." Rowan cleared his throat uncomfortably. "So, how's work going, Zeph?" "Oh, same old corporate drama, though I have been getting some interesting messages lately." I don't know why I said it. Maybe the stress was making me reckless. Anonymous ones. People seem to have a lot of opinions about other people's business. Malcolm's head snapped up, his eyes boring into mine. "What kind of messages?" "Just gossip. You know how people are. They see you talking to someone and suddenly they're writing romance novels in their heads." "Who have you been talking to?" Vivian asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. I felt trapped, like a deer in headlights. "Just people, friends, family." My eyes flicked to Rowan again, and I saw him go pale. "I need to use the restroom," I announced, standing up abruptly. The ladies' room at Romano's was small and dimly lit, with old-fashioned floral wallpaper that had seen better days. I was touching up my lipstick when the door opened behind me. Vivian walked in, her face set in hard lines I'd never seen before. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. "About what?" "About whatever's going on between you and Rowan." The lipstick slipped from my fingers, clattering into the sink. "I don't know what you mean." "I've been watching you two all morning. The looks, the tension, the way you keep bringing up companionship and anonymous messages." "I wasn't born yesterday, Zephyra." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. "You're imagining things." "Am I? Because my son has been miserable for weeks, and now suddenly you're making cryptic comments and flirting with his brother at the dinner table." "I wasn't flirting. Don't." Her voice cut through my protest like a knife. "Don't insult my intelligence. I know what I saw." We stared at each other in the mirror, and I could see my carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. "Whatever you think you know." "I know enough," Vivian said quietly. "And if you've done what I think you've done, you need to tell Malcolm before someone else does." She turned and walked out, leaving me alone with my reflection and the terrible certainty that my world was about to collapse. Monday morning at the office felt like walking into a war zone. I could feel eyes on me from the moment I walked through the door, conversation stopping abruptly when I passed by cubicles. By lunchtime, it was clear that somehow word had gotten out. "So," my coworker Jennifer said, sliding into the chair across from me in the break room, "heard you had an interesting weekend." My sandwich suddenly tasted like cardboard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, come on, Zeph. The whole office is talking about it. Someone saw you at that apartment complex on Maple Street Friday night. The same complex where that cute gym instructor lives. What's his name? Rowan?" The blood drained from my face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because Sarah from accounting lives in that building, and she said she saw you in the lobby around 10 p.m. Said you looked pretty cozy with some guy who definitely wasn't your husband." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "People need to mind their own business." But Jennifer wasn't done. "Is it true he's your brother-in-law? Because that's what everyone's saying, that you're having an affair with your husband's brother. That's ridiculous gossip, and you know it." I stormed back to my desk, but the whispers followed me. Every phone call felt like an interrogation. Every email seemed loaded with hidden meaning. Around 3 o'clock, I got a message from an unknown number. "Your husband deserves better. Everyone knows what you did." Then another. "Homewrecker. How could you do that to your own family?" And another. "Malcolm's a good man. You don't deserve him." My hands were shaking as I deleted message after message. How had this gotten out so fast? Who was watching me? Who had seen me at Rowan's apartment? I called Nina during my break, desperate for someone to tell me I wasn't going crazy. "They're all just jealous," she said immediately. Jealous that you have the courage to go after what makes you happy. Ignore the haters, Zeph. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your choices. But what if Malcolm finds out? What if he's already heard the rumors? Then you deal with it when it happens. You can't live your life worried about what other people think. Besides, this is his fault for neglecting you in the first place. That evening, I tried to act normal at home. I made dinner, helped Ari with her homework, did the dishes while Malcolm disappeared into his office again. But I could feel the weight of secrets pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Rowan. "We need to talk. This is eating me alive." I glanced toward Malcolm's closed office door, then typed back, "Not now. Too risky." "I can't do this anymore, Zeph. I keep thinking about Malcolm, about what we did to him. He's my brother. You didn't seem to care about that Friday night. That was a mistake. A huge mistake. I should have never let it happen. His guilt was making me angry. Why was I the only one taking responsibility for my own happiness? Why did everyone expect me to sacrifice my needs for other people's comfort? I posted on Facebook that night, something vague but pointed. It's amazing how quick people are to judge when they don't know the whole story. Sometimes you have to choose your own happiness over other people's expectations. No regrets, Ansha living my truth. The responses came quickly. Nina liked it immediately, adding a comment. "You go, girl. Life's too short to live for other people." But there were other responses too. Comments from Malcolm's friends, from people at church, from neighbors. Most were subtle, but the message was clear. They knew, and they disapproved. Malcolm emerged from his office around 11, finding me still scrolling through the comments on my phone. "What's that about?" he asked, nodding toward my screen. "Just some drama at work. People gossiping about things that aren't their business." He studied my face for a long moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing more than I wanted him to see. "Zephyra," he said quietly, "is there something you need to tell me?" My heart stopped. This was it, the moment of truth. I could come clean, apologize, beg for forgiveness. Or I could stick to my story, maintain my innocence, and hope the rumors died down. Like what? Like where you really were Friday night. Like why my brother has been avoiding my calls all weekend. Like why my mother called today asking if we were having marriage problems. The walls were closing in. I could feel my carefully constructed world starting to crumble, but I wasn't ready to give up yet. "Your mother is paranoid, and Rowan's probably just busy with work. As for Friday night, I told you, I was with Nina." Malcolm nodded slowly, but his eyes never left my face. "Okay, if you say so." He turned and walked upstairs, leaving me alone with my phone and my lies, and the growing certainty that time was running out. Tuesday afternoon, I got a text from Vivian. "Come to the house. We need to talk, now." I considered ignoring it, but something in the tone made me think that would only make things worse. I told my boss I had a family emergency and drove to the Grayling family home with my stomach in knots. Vivian answered the door before I could even knock. Her face was set in stone, and she stepped aside to let me in without a word of greeting. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the living room couch. The coffee table was covered with papers, printed screenshots, receipts, what looked like photos. My blood turned to ice as I recognized some of the images. "What is all this?" "Evidence," Vivian said simply. She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a judge about to deliver a sentence. "Evidence of what you've been doing to my son." She picked up the first sheet of paper, a screenshot of text messages between me and Rowan. Messages I didn't even remember sending. Flirty comments about needing someone who understood me. Complaints about Malcolm's coldness. "Where did you get these?" Rowan gave them to me. "He came to see me yesterday, crying like he was 12 years old again. He told me everything, Zephyra. Everything." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Rowan had thrown me under the bus to save himself. painted me as the seductress who'd led him astray. He's lying. Stop! Vivian's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Just stop. I have the rideshare receipts showing you went to his apartment Friday night. I have the building security log showing what time you arrived and what time you left. I have text messages. I have witness statements from your co-workers who saw you acting suspicious. Don't insult my intelligence by lying to my face. I stared at the papers spread across the table, my mind racing. How had she gotten all this so quickly? How long had she been investigating me? It was one mistake, I said finally. One night when I was feeling lonely and ignored. Malcolm had been giving me the silent treatment for a week. So you decided to sleep with his brother? It wasn't planned. I just needed someone to talk to, someone who would listen to me. Rowan was there. He was kind, and things just happened. Vivian's laugh was bitter and cold. Things just happened. Like you just happened to put on your best dress, just happened to call an Uber to his apartment, just happened to stay until midnight. Malcolm drove me to it. If he'd been a better husband, if he'd paid attention to me, none of this would have happened. I have needs too, Vivian. I'm a human being with feelings, not just a wife and mother. You're right, Vivian said, and for a moment I thought she might actually understand. You are a human being with feelings. You're also a married woman with a 7-year-old daughter and a husband who's been working 16-hour days to pay for the house you wanted and the private school you insisted on for Ari. What's that supposed to mean? It means Malcolm wasn't ignoring you, you selfish child. He was killing himself trying to provide for your family. He took on extra projects to pay for your credit card bills, worked weekends to afford Ari's dance classes, stayed up all night fixing problems so he wouldn't have to travel and leave you alone. The words hit me like slaps. That's not... He never told me. Because he didn't want you to worry. Because he thought you'd understand that sometimes marriage means sacrifice, means putting your family's needs before your own wants. I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You wanted to play the victim, wanted to justify your selfishness by painting Malcolm as the villain. Well, congratulations, Zephyra. You got what you wanted. She stood up and walked to the window, her back rigid with anger and disappointment. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now you go home and you pack your things, because Malcolm knows everything, and he's done protecting you from the consequences of your choices. What do you mean he knows everything? Vivian turned back to me, and I saw something that might have been pity in her eyes. I mean, he's known since Saturday morning. He hired a private investigator last week when he started suspecting something was wrong. He has photos, Zephyra. Photos of you going into Rowan's building, photos of you leaving. He has copies of every text message, every lie you told. The room started spinning. That's impossible. He would have said something. He wanted to give you a chance to come clean. He kept waiting for you to tell him the truth, to show some remorse, some acknowledgement of what you'd done. Instead, you lied to his face and flirted with his brother at Sunday brunch. I thought about Malcolm's strange behavior over the weekend, the way he'd been watching me, the questions about where I'd been. He'd known all along, and I'd walked right into his trap. I need to talk to him, I said, standing up on shaky legs. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, and there's nothing to discuss. Malcolm's already filed for divorce. The papers are being served tomorrow morning. The words hit me like a physical blow. He can't do that. We can work this out. It was one mistake. One mistake that destroyed your marriage and your family. One mistake that humiliated a good man who loved you. One mistake that broke your daughter's home apart. I stumbled toward the door, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. Malcolm wouldn't really divorce me over one night of weakness. He loved me. We had a child together. We could get counseling, work through this. Vivian, please, I said, turning back to her. Talk to him. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him it will never happen again. She looked at me with something that might have been sadness. It's too late for sorry, Zephyra. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The house looked the same from the outside, but when I walked through the front door, I could feel that everything had changed. Malcolm was sitting at the kitchen table with a manila envelope in front of him. He looked up when I entered, and his eyes were completely empty. "We need to talk," he said quietly. The manila envelope sat between us on the kitchen table like a loaded gun. Malcolm's hands were folded calmly in front of him, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful control he was exercising over his emotions. "Before you say anything," I started, "I want you to know that I'm sorry. I know I made a terrible mistake, but—" "Stop." His voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop talking for a minute and listen to me." I closed my mouth, my heart hammering against my ribs. Malcolm opened the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Photos, text message printouts, receipts, timestamps, the evidence of my betrayal laid out in black and white. "I hired Jasper Lynn to handle this," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You remember Jasper? He was at our wedding. He's a family law attorney now." "Malcolm, please, let me explain." "Explain what? Explain how you drove to my brother's apartment at 10:23 p.m. last Friday. Explain how you stayed there until 11:47 p.m. Explain these text messages where you call me a cold fish and tell Rowan he's the only one who understands you." Each word was like a knife twist. Seeing my private conversations laid out in official documents made them seem even more ugly and betraying. "I was hurt," I said desperately. "You'd been ignoring me for a week. I felt invisible, unwanted. I just needed someone to make me feel like I mattered." Malcolm's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Invisible? I was working 18-hour days to pay off your credit card debt. I was taking on extra projects to afford the private school you insisted on for Ari. I was killing myself trying to give you everything you wanted. You never told me that. I shouldn't have had to. You're my wife. You should have noticed that I was exhausted, that I was stressed, that I was drowning trying to keep up with your spending. Instead, you decided I was neglecting you and used that as an excuse to sleep with my brother." The clinical way he said it made it sound even worse. I could see Ari's backpack by the front door and realized she must be upstairs, hopefully too far away to hear this conversation. "Where is Ari?" "At my parents' house. She'll be staying there for a while." "You can't take my daughter away from me." "I'm not taking her anywhere. You're the one who chose to destroy our family." He slid another set of papers across the table. "Divorce petition. I'm filing for full custody and requesting that you vacate the marital home within 30 days. The words swam in front of my eyes. Legal language about irreconcilable differences, adultery, breach of marital trust. My signature line at the bottom, waiting. "You can't be serious. Malcolm, I love you. I love our family." It was one mistake, one moment of weakness. People get past this kind of thing all the time. Do they? Do they get past their spouse sleeping with their sibling? Do they get past the lies, the manipulation, the complete lack of remorse? I am remorseful. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. "This is your Facebook post from last night. Sometimes you have to choose your own happiness over other people's expectations. No regrets. Living my truth." Does that sound like remorse to you? I stared at the post, remembering how empowered I'd felt when I wrote it, how justified. Now it looked petty and cruel. I was trying to deal with all the gossip at work. People were saying things. People were saying things because you gave them something to talk about. You destroyed our reputation, our family's standing in the community, our daughter's sense of security, and you did it all for one night with my brother. It wasn't just about sex, I said, grasping for something that might make him understand. It was about feeling valued, feeling heard. Rowan listened to me, made me feel important. Rowan called me yesterday, Malcolm interrupted, crying, begging for forgiveness. He told me exactly what happened, how you showed up at his door, how you manipulated him by talking about how terrible I was as a husband. The betrayal stung. Rowan had promised he wouldn't say anything, had sworn it would stay between us. He's lying to protect himself. He's taking responsibility for his actions, something you still haven't learned to do. Malcolm stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. Do you know what the worst part is, Zephyra? It's not even the cheating. It's the complete lack of accountability. Even now, sitting here with the evidence spread out in front of you, you're still trying to make this my fault. I'm not. You are. You've blamed me for working too much, blamed Rowan for being vulnerable, blamed your co-workers for gossiping, blamed everyone except the person who made the choice to betray her marriage vows. I could hear the pain underneath his controlled tone, and for the first time, the full weight of what I'd done started to sink in. This wasn't just about me feeling neglected or seeking attention. I'd destroyed something precious, something that couldn't be repaired. What about counseling? I asked desperately. What about trying to work through this? Malcolm turned back to me, and I saw that his eyes were wet with unshed tears. I can't look at you without seeing you with him. I can't trust anything you say, because you've proven you're willing to lie to protect yourself. I can't share a bed with someone who shared one with my brother. Malcolm, please. I'm done, Zephyra. I'm done being married to someone who sees me as the enemy instead of the partner. I'm done trying to make you happy when nothing I do is ever enough. I'm done pretending this marriage can survive what you've done to it. He picked up the papers and slid them back into the envelope. Jasper will be in touch about the details. You can stay in the house until we work out the custody arrangement, but I'll be staying at my parents' place. And Ari will spend weekdays with me and weekends with you, assuming you can prove you're capable of putting her needs before your own. The implication was clear. He didn't trust me to be a good mother anymore either. I never wanted this, I said quietly. Yes, you did. Maybe not consciously, but you wanted out of this marriage badly enough to blow it up rather than work on it. You wanted the drama, the excitement, the feeling of being desired more than you wanted your family. He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at me. For what it's worth, I did love you. I loved you enough to work myself into the ground trying to make you happy. I loved you enough to forgive a lot of things that probably should have been red flags, but I can't love you enough to forgive this. The front door closed behind him with a quiet click, and I was alone with the divorce papers and the wreckage of my life. The next morning, I woke up to find Malcolm's wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a note. Jasper will contact you today to schedule a meeting. Please have your attorney present. I called Nina, sobbing into the phone about how unfair this all was, how Malcolm was being vindictive and cruel, but even she seemed less supportive than usual. Maybe you should have thought about consequences before you slept with his brother, she said finally. I mean, I supported you taking care of your needs, but his brother, really, Zeph? Even my biggest ally was starting to abandon me. The meeting with Jasper was scheduled for the following Monday. I spent the weekend trying to find an attorney who would take my case, but every lawyer I called seemed to have the same response. Adultery cases, especially with family members, were hard to defend. Monday morning arrived grey and cold. Jasper's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. He greeted me professionally but distantly, the warmth he'd shown at our wedding completely gone. Malcolm was already seated at the conference table when I arrived, flanked by both his parents. The message was clear. I was alone in this. Let's get started, Jasper said, opening a thick file. Mrs. Grayling, do you have legal representation? I'm representing myself. Jasper's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't comment. Very well. Mr. Grayling is seeking dissolution of marriage on grounds of adultery, with full custody of the minor child and division of assets according to the prenuptial agreement. What prenuptial agreement? I asked, confused. Jasper slid a document across the table. The one you signed before your wedding. It clearly states that in the event of divorce due to infidelity, the unfaithful spouse forfeits claim to marital assets and property. I stared at the signature on the bottom of the page, My signature in my handwriting. I vaguely remembered Malcolm asking me to sign some papers before the wedding, but I'd been so focused on the ceremony planning that I hadn't read them carefully. I didn't understand what I was signing. The document was notarized and witnessed, Jasper said calmly. It's legally binding. So what does that mean? It means you're entitled to your personal belongings and whatever assets you brought into the marriage. The house, the cars, the joint accounts, all of that stays with Mr. Grayling. The room started spinning. I can't afford an apartment on my salary. Where am I supposed to live? That's not our concern, Vivian said coldly. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy your marriage. What about Ari? What about my daughter? Malcolm spoke for the first time since I'd entered the room. Ari will live with me during the school week and spend alternate weekends with you, provided you can demonstrate stable housing and employment. You can't take my child away from me. I'm not taking her away. I'm protecting her from the chaos you've created. She needs stability, consistency, a home where she doesn't have to worry about her mother's next crisis. Jasper continued outlining the terms of the divorce, each detail feeling like another nail in my coffin. No alimony due to the adultery clause. Limited visitation rights, responsibility for my own legal fees. This isn't fair, I said desperately. I made one mistake, one night of weakness. This is destroying my entire life. You destroyed your own life, Malcolm said quietly. I'm just making it official. 2 hours later, I walked out of Jasper's office with nothing but a stack of papers and the clothes on my back. My marriage was over. My daughter would be living with her father, and I had 30 days to find somewhere to live on a secretary's salary. As I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at the divorce decree, I finally understood what Malcolm had meant about consequences. I'd thought I was choosing happiness, choosing to put myself first for once. Instead, I'd chosen to lose everything that actually mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hope it was worth it. I looked up to see Malcolm walking to his car with his parents, his shoulders straight and his head held high. He looked like a man who'd been through hell but had come out the other side with his dignity intact. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who'd gambled everything on one night of feeling wanted and had lost it all. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Malcolm got the house, the custody arrangement he wanted, and the respect of everyone who knew our story. I got a studio apartment across town and every other weekend with my daughter. Rowan moved to another state shortly after the papers were signed, unable to face his family after what we'd done. The gym where he worked let him transfer to their Phoenix location, and I never heard from him again. Nina stopped returning my calls after I asked her for money to cover my security deposit. Apparently, supporting my journey of self-discovery was easier when it didn't cost her anything. 6 months after that night at Rowan's apartment, I was sitting alone in my tiny apartment on a Friday evening, watching TV and eating takeout Chinese food. Ari was with Malcolm for the weekend, probably helping Vivian make cookies or playing board games with her grandfather. My phone rang. Malcolm's number. Hello? Ari wants to talk to you, he said simply. Mommy. My daughter's voice was bright and happy. Guess what? Daddy's getting married. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Her name is Sarah, and she's really nice, and she has a dog named Buster, and she makes the best pancakes ever. I managed to make appropriate responses, told Ari I loved her, and hung up feeling like I'd been hollowed out from the inside. Malcolm had moved on. He'd found someone new, someone who probably appreciated his quiet strength and steady devotion. Someone who wouldn't throw away a good man for one night of feeling special. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by my window, looking out at the parking lot of my apartment complex. This was my life now, the life I'd chosen when I decided that my momentary happiness was worth more than my marriage, my family, my future. The divorce papers had been served exactly as Malcolm promised, the morning after I'd destroyed everything. And now, 2 years later, I was still living with the consequences of that one night when I thought I deserved more than what I had. Malcolm remarried Sarah on a beautiful Saturday in June. I know because Ari told me all about it, how pretty Sarah looked in her dress, how happy Daddy seemed, how even Grandma Vivian cried during the ceremony. I wasn't invited, of course. I watched from my car across the street from the church, seeing all the people who used to be part of my life celebrating Malcolm's new beginning. The beginning I'd made possible by destroying our old life. As I drove back to my empty apartment, I realized that Malcolm had gotten the ultimate revenge. Not through cruelty or vindictiveness, but through moving on, through building a better life without me, through showing everyone, including our daughter, that he was capable of real happiness with someone who valued what he had to offer. I'd thought I was choosing myself that night at Rowan's apartment. Instead, I'd chosen to lose the best thing I'd ever had for the worst reason possible. The papers had been served at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, exactly 12 hours after I'd made the stupidest decision of my life, and I'd been paying for it every day since.